What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in today for another episode of Niners News here on 49ers Hive. My name is Zach Hernandez. I'm joined by my co-host Matt Llewellyn, and today we're going to be talking some 49ers, specifically which training camp battles we are excited to watch. Matt, why don't you go ahead and go first? Let us know which training camp battles you have an eye on.
Yeah, my training camp battle that I'm most interested in is to see the starting cornerbacks. And, most people think that it's going to be a competition between Ahkello Witherspoon and Emmanuel Moseley. But I'm going to throw Richard Sherman in there. I mean, they can trot him out to start, but as we saw at the end of last year, there is some decline there. And, as much as you want to be loyal to, players and leaders and things like that, best players are going to play, you know what I mean? And for me, it's going to be very interesting to see with no offseason, really, no preseason games, nothing like that, who they trot out there, because it's going to be really dependent on what you see in team practice. So if Witherspoon and Moseley are killing it, and Sherman's getting burnt toast in that new kind of revamped wide receiver locker room, then I wouldn't be surprised to see Sherman maybe coming off the bench, or maybe they look to move him. And I know that 49er fans are going to really disagree with that, but it's one of those things where we see it all the time, where you get an aging vet who there's that threshold where all of a sudden, hey, we're good, and then they start to decline a little bit, and then as before you know it, they're on the bench. And that I think that can be a real situation here. There's been numerous examples, and it wasn't just in the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. He's had a hard time covering the top end receivers, and I know there were stats out there saying like, oh, he only gives up 0.8 yards per pass coverage snap, or whatever those advanced metrics numbers. But when quarterbacks look his way, he can be beat. And, those stats are based on a reputation that he has. But sooner or later, someone's going to test him. They're going to test him consistently. And it's going to be whether or not he can, match up to that. So for me, I do expect him to stay as the left cornerback and start for the 49ers. But it's going to be an interesting battle, to say the least.
When I think of Richard Sherman having struggles, I think of Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans totally took him to town. He gave him, he ran him up and down the field. He was having a field day, essentially, with all due respect to Richard Sherman. Mm-hmm. Mike Evans is just younger. He's faster. He's bigger. And he struggles with those type of wide receivers. So I could definitely see that. I know a lot of fans are kind of going to be upset to hear that. We've had comments in our last video saying that we have it totally wrong on Sherman. Look, we're not saying Sherman's trash. We're not saying he's in the bottom tier of corners in the league, but he's not what he used to be. Right. And Father Time is undefeated. That happens to every single player. So and it
happens quick too. If you remember, I mean, his arch nemesis, Darrelle Revis fell off a cliff. Just all of a sudden, he was just bad. And I think all it took was somebody to just test him. And you said Mike Evans, and for as physically gifted as Mike Evans is not exactly a burner. You know what I mean? Like, he's not the fastest dude out there. He's relatively fast, and he's fast for his size. But you look at guys like Stephon Diggs made him look silly on a route. Sherman just 10 yards off. Again, we talk about Devontae Adams and Sammy Watkins in the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl respectively, where he just got beat, and you're going to have the plays like he had against Cleveland where he undercuts a route and gets an interception like he did against Baker Mayfield. But that's going to become more of the exception rather than the rule. And instead of being a top 3 cornerback, maybe he's only a top 20 cornerback. And, you think, the fans can be mad at that, but like that degree really matters. The difference between top 3 and top 20, that's a huge gap.
It does. And, like you said, he's kind of known for undercutting those routes. He relies a lot at this point in his career on his experience and his technique. And it doesn't always get there when you're getting beat by physicality. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. For me, I'm extremely excited to watch the wide receiver battle play out. I just had Leo Luna of Sports Illustrated on. Go check out that interview if you guys haven't. I'll drop it in the description below. And, I told him the same thing. And you could call me more of your stereotypical NFL fan because it's a bit of a flashier, sexier position. But there's a lot of talent on that wide receiver group. And they just drafted Brandon Ayuk. Last year you got Debo. The year before that you got Dante Pettis. It's like there's a lot of talent that is all within a year or two here. And it's cultivating. And it's really exciting to see what's going to happen. Who is going to step up now that Emmanuel Sanders is in New Orleans. There's no veteran in that room. Marquise Goodwin is now in Philadelphia, and he's not even playing this year. So there's no veteran leadership. There's no veteran presence. So they had Travis Benjamin, and he opted out as well. That was the most closest thing they had to a vet on that positional group. So I think we've seen Debo say before earlier in this offseason, he's going to learn how to step up, even though he's not the most vocal leader. He's going to try and not only be vocal, but show it by his actions. Go out in the field and get the job done and show these younger receivers what it really takes. Because if anybody has had success out of that group, it's Debo. And that's not even saying much because he's only had about a year, half a year, 3/4 of a year of success. But it's a lot more than most of these other guys. So I'm really excited to see how this shapes out, I should say. Who wins what, how the depth chart shapes out, especially with the expanded roster sizes. We could see guys that normally wouldn't have a spot make it and make a name for themselves. Guys like Juwan Jennings, Richie James, he might not have made this roster if not for the expanded roster size. So I just really think that that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I think Travis Benjamin opting out actually really did help Richie James' chances at remaining on the team, because Benjamin really, people were like, oh, well, he's not even a good wide receiver. But what he is a good return guy. And, I've said it before, Richie James is okay on punt returns. He's like, middle of the road guy, but he is really bad on kick returns. And I just don't. You'd like to see somebody else there. It's probably not going to happen. But I do agree with you. There's a lot of uncertainty in that wide receiver room. And when you think about it and you think that, Trent Taylor is the guy that, off the top of my head, that has the most experience on the team, but he's missed a lot of time. So, you're talking about, Trent Taylor, maybe a guy like Dante Pettis even is one of the guys that is going to come in with the most experience. It's weird to think about, that they don't really have any firmly established veterans, and that's going to be something that I think is going to put a little bit more pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle to kind of rein them in and, let them know, hey, this is what we need to do and get it going. And so there's another hashtag pay George Kittle moment right there. It's Kittle being a leader for the wide receivers as well. So, and then, you want to see something out of Juwan Jennings. It'd be nice. He was a late round pick. They're all going to have their opportunities. That's for sure. Especially with Debo just now looking like he's doing some rehab work. There's video out of him making some cuts on that foot. We don't know when he's going to be back. You obviously want to ease him in. There's going to be no preseason games this year, really. So, I mean, it's not like you can put him out there for, 5-10 plays and then pull him back and see how he does. I mean, by the time Debo's ready for them to put him in the game, it's going to be real games. So it remains to be seen how that's going to affect the room too. Jalen Hurd coming back from injury, Trent Taylor coming back from injury. And that's really, when you take into account the mental lapses that Dante Pettis had, and you can even consider that a form of injury, as far as, he had a sophomore slump and he's got a confidence problem, and that needs to be rehabbed and fixed. So you got a lot of wide receivers with a lot of injuries coming back, a lot of uncertainty. So yeah, I think you're right on that.
And, all of this talk about wide receivers, we haven't even talked about Kendrick Bourne. He's kind of up there with Trent Taylor as well with experience. Yeah. He's not really thought of as a vet because he's more of a playful, youthful type of receiver. He's a big kid out there on the field.
He has put work in this offseason that you can see. I mean, if social media is to be believed, like what's going on behind the scenes, Kendrick Bourne is trying to light the world on fire with how much he's working out there. So that'll be very interesting to see too. And actually, now that I think about it, Kendrick Bourne, I don't know what year he's in, but he's got to be up there as far as close to the top as far as receiver experience goes. I think he's in year 4, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, we don't even talk about Kendrick Bourne, but really he's, to me, the way that he's worked and the uncertainty everywhere else, he might be one of the guys that's a starter, like right off the bat.
Yeah, I agree. He's probably one of the closest things to a sure thing they have in the wide receiver group outside of Debo Samuel. And he's, like you said, he's put in the work, man. He's been grinding hard. He shows it. And, not all receivers, not all NFL players get the fans a glimpse into that life. And he chooses to let us in on that. And it's kind of cool to see from a fan perspective what it takes, that daily grind to really improve as a receiver, as a player in the NFL, because it's not easy. And we've always heard it's not easy, but it's a different thing to see it. And he's out there showing us. So it's cool to have that insight. But I think that's going to do it for us today, guys.
Actually, before we go, one more, and this is just a little bonus that nobody's talking about. Man, I really want to see Trent Williams try to block Nick Bosa. I want to see that. That's not a position battle, but I mean, it's gonna be a battle. So look out for that.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one.
Yeah.
Two incredibly talented football players. One's a Mack truck, and the other one's just speed and power and technique.
Yeah.
So crazy to see how that's going to play out. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter. Our handles are below on the screen. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and drop a comment below on which training camp battle you are looking forward to watching.
Go ahead and click the bell for all your notifications. We're bringing you 49ers news all the time.
Thanks, guys.
Go Niners.